Well, I guess I should get started. It's 7 o'clock according to my computer. Good evening, everybody. My name is John Spritz. I'm on the board of the Back Cove Neighborhood Association, and welcome to our District 4 Charter Commission Candidates Forum. Thank you very much for joining us. I have a few housekeeping notes up front, and then we'll move into the forum proper. This is sponsored, this forum, by Deering Center Neighborhood Association, the Back Cove Neighborhood Association, and Friends of Woodford Corner. I'd like to thank all of the committee members who made this possible, as well as the candidates too, and David Very, who's going to be our timekeeper tonight. Please note that this event is being broadcast live on Facebook, and it's also being recorded. To view the recording afterwards, you can go to the Friends of Woodford's Corner YouTube channel. So you go to YouTube, you look for Friends of Woodford's Corner, and they'll have the recording there. Only the candidates, the moderator, and the timekeeper will be recorded. All viewers are muted. While you can see small pictures of neighbors attending the forum on the top of your screen, only the candidates, the moderator, and the timekeeper will be in the recording, the four of us down here. Questions were developed in advance with input from the community and committee members, so there will not be open questions tonight. We've sort of gone through that process a little bit already. Our two candidates are Cheryl Leeman and Marcques Houston. Thank you both for joining us this evening. We have about an hour to play with until 8 o'clock. I'm going to give a little bit of background, explain how the process will go, and then we'll move right into questions. As I assume you know, if you're watching this, we have a Charter Commission election coming up in June. Charter Commission was authorized by the voters as a way to look once again at the city charter. I actually sat in the last Charter Commission, which is about a decade ago, and they happen periodically in Portland's history, an opportunity for people to look closely at the charter, which is essentially the constitution for the city, and recommend any changes. The way it works mechanically is that 9 people are going to be elected in June at the election. Those 9 people, which will be similar to the one for each of the 5 districts plus 4 at large, just like in the city elections, those 9 people join 3 others who are already selected by the city council. That's a total of 12. Those 12 people will be the Charter Commission, and they will start sitting probably in July, August. Probably the first thing they'll do is choose a chair and set up ground rules for how they want to run as a Charter Commission. And they will hold a series of meetings throughout probably a year or so. Those meetings are going to be public. My guess is that they'll probably be available on Zoom too. I have to figure out the technology for that when it comes down the line. And at the end of the Charter Commission's deliberations, it's going to propose recommendations, which City Council will then pass along to the voters. And the voters have to decide if they accept those recommendations or not. They may include small or sweeping changes to the city's charter. The voters in an election would then say yay or nay whether they accept those recommendations made by the Charter Commission. The way we're going to run tonight is each of our candidates, Cheryl Leeman and Marcques Houston, is going to have 3 minutes for an opening statement. And as moderator, I'll then ask them a series of questions following that. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer each question with answers of no longer than 2 minutes. And the first question will be asked of Ms. Leeman, and then Mr. Houston, and then the next question will go to Mr. Houston, Ms. Leeman, and so forth, back and forth. And approximately 10 of 8 will give them opportunities to make closing statements. David Very, who is also on this call, and my situation, he's just below me on this screen. David has a yellow and a red piece of paper, which he's now going to show us. Yellow, there you go, David, and red. When the candidates have 30 seconds left in each answer, he'll put the yellow piece of paper up so that hopefully they're looking at the screen and they know they have 30 seconds left. And when they are concluded, he'll put up the red piece of paper and that says, you're done. That'll be our buzzer in a sense. But again, we'll start out with 3 minutes for each opening statement. So do our candidates understand the ground rules? Everybody's with me so far? Good. Mr. Houston, we're going to start with you. Don't forget to unmute yourself. And you have 3 minutes to talk about why you're running for Charter Commission, anything you'd like to say. Go ahead.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all the neighborhood associations for organizing this tonight. I know this is very new for all of us doing this over Zoom, so I appreciate all your work. My name is Marcus Houston. I'm a lifelong Mainer from rural central Maine. I was the first in my family to attend college, and I moved to Portland to pursue the very thing that my mother fought tirelessly for me to have, which was opportunity. I've been organizing since I was 15 years old when now Councilor Pius Ali came to my high school before he was a member of Portland City Council. And through working with Pius, I've really learned the value of standing up for people and communities who have often been forgotten about and giving them a voice. A little bit about me now. I live on Ocean Ave with my partner Lily and our dog Navi. In my professional life, I work as an assistant track and field coach at Colby College. And I also work as a parent organizer for Starting Strong, which is a Portland-based organization that advocates for better access to childcare and early childhood programs. And I'm running for Charter Commission because I've spent my life working to lift the voices of people who have often been forgotten about, whether that's through organizing marches for racial justice or advocating for increased access to childcare. My main priority is standing up for my neighbors and ensuring that everyone has a voice while bringing integrity, transparency, and accountability to local government. I'm not a politician and I'm not a policy expert by any means. I have my ideas of what we can do to make this system work and support all people. But as a representative on the Charter Commission, my job would be to represent the people of District 4, present their ideas, and give them a voice in the charter review process. I'm a Black man from a working class family, was the first in my family to attend college. Those are the perspectives that I bring to the table, but I'm not a homeowner. I don't have kids. I'm not a nurse or any kind of frontline worker. So that's why I'm committed to talking to as many people as possible in the district to gain their perspective. That's how we're going to build a better Portland together. And now for the past few years now, we've heard a lot about creating systemic change. Now is our opportunity to do just that. This is our opportunity to look at the charter under a microscope and make the changes that the people want to see in the system. This race isn't about me or any one individual. This race is about us. This race is about character, values, and identity. It's about who we want to be as a city. So that's a little bit about who I am and why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Leeman, 3 minutes. You got it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the neighborhood associations forum and all of the others in attendance. Very happy to be here with you. In the way of introduction, I am retired. As a candidate, I am the longtime resident of Portland, and I am the older candidate. However, with longevity and age has come experience, adversity, tolerance, life lessons, and wisdom. Much of the aforementioned comes from growing up in a working class family, raising my 2 children as a single parent, obtaining my college degree by taking 1 or 2 classes a night for 10 years, if you can believe it. But it was important because I value education, and getting a degree was important for me and to serve as a role model for my children with regards to the importance of education. I've also been a woman in a male-dominated workplace and politics. When I came into politics in the 80s, the council was predominantly male, and there certainly were struggles between the genders. I am also a breast cancer survivor. Because I had a desire to make contributions to my community and give District 4 a voice, I actively involved myself in our schools and in our community, serving on the school board and the city council representing District 4 for many years, being re-elected repeatedly from a very diverse district politically and otherwise. I'm humbled by the support I received over the years from the residents of District 4, and I am proud to have actively participated in the positive evolution of the city of Portland to its current status of life's good here. And it is good here. That's not to say that there aren't things that we need to continue evaluating, and that's the purpose of the Charter Commission. Where we go from here to make Portland the best it can be for all of us is going to be very important. The 12-member nonpartisan citizen Charter Commission will be entrusted with huge responsibility. It will be vitally important to approach all of those discussions with transparency, inclusivity, and integrity, listening to all the varied viewpoints on the issues. My experience has taught me that the public is better served with a focus on the process, and the best ideas come from a dialogue. It will be critical to have public trust in the process. As to why I'm running, quite simply stated, it was obvious to me that the potential makeup of the commission was lacking two things: experience and balance. I will bring those two things into the process, plus historical knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, since the Charter Commission is going to be looking closely at the charter, what three areas or several areas do you think potentially could use attention and revision of the charter? Where do you think there is opportunity for change and potentially improvement? Cheryl, I'll start with you. 2 minutes you have.
Well, I think clearly, as we know, the impetus for the Charter Commission was fair elections. So that would have to be a #1 priority. As to other recommendations, I am pretty adamant about going into the process with no preconceived notions as to outcomes. I want to keep an open mind to any of the subjects that are being brought up publicly and have a full vetting and research all of those issues, pros and cons, whatever it takes to get a full understanding of each one of those issues, why they're before us, does it make sense to move it forward in the form of a recommendation. And that pretty much sums up where I'm coming from. I process looking for public input and a vetting of the issues without having a predetermined outcome.
Thank you. Marquez, same question. What are three areas perhaps where you think the charter could use attention and revision?
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that sort of municipal clean elections is sort of what got us to this point. So I think that is important for us to address that and make sure that we honor that. People have really stated that they want to see municipal clean elections program. So I would like to see us honor that. Another thing that I hear a lot when I'm talking to voters is about the roles of the mayor and the city manager. I think that we've seen, it was obviously a topic of discussion in the last Charter Commission, and I think that there is still some work to be done there, some restructuring to be done there. When I talk to voters, they really don't understand who is working for them and how. It's a little unclear to them. It's a little confusing. I do believe that there is a role for both a strong mayor and a city manager. A city manager or public administrator, something along those lines could be solely, could be administrative, sort of running the day-to-day operations, while the mayor is more focused on budget and policy. As it stands right now, I sort of see it as the mayor is elected because of a vision that they have for the city of Portland, but doesn't necessarily have the tools and resources to live out that vision in its entirety. And the last thing that I think is important for us to address, and that we've been hearing a lot about lately, is the school budget process. I hear a lot of people at doors talking about the school budget process, and I think it would be important for us to find a way to streamline that process so it's not going back and forth between the school board and the city council. It's easier for everyday Portlanders to understand and participate in that process so that we are adequately meeting the needs of the children and students in our public schools.
Thank you. Another question is, I want you both to be positive here. And I'll start with you, Marquez, this time. List and describe 3 areas where you believe the city of Portland does a particularly good job of serving its citizens.
Thank you. I think that one thing that I really appreciate about Portland is sort of the upkeep of our parks. Here in District 4, we have Payson Park, which is obviously a great place to be. And I really love Payson Park. I love that the farmers market was there today. It was super close to home and great to get to. So I really love our parks and sort of the trails and everything else. The recreation opportunities here in the city are really great. And I think that there are lots of opportunities for, especially now with COVID and everything, we've found that Zoom has been a great way for us to expand access to city council and school board meetings. That's something that I thought we were lacking in the past, but since COVID has started, I think we've been able to address that. And I think that should be the standard moving forward, is increasing access of those meetings and so on. And lastly, I think that, let me think, I'm trying to think of which one's gonna be my third one. I would say that our schools and communities, supporting our schools and communities, I think some of the strongest things about District 4 are our schools and our students there. They all have great communities, and we should keep supporting them. You know, like Przomska School has its own individual identity. So does Ocean Ave Elementary School and the other schools in the district. And I feel like the city of Portland does a great job of supporting those schools and addressing their needs and making sure that they are empowered in their educational journey.
Thank you very much. Cheryl, the same question for you now, which is, what 3 areas do you think are places where the city of Portland does a particularly good job of serving its citizens?
I think overall, city services as a whole are exceptional. We don't think about who does the street sweeping. We don't think about who picks up our recycling, but they're out there every day, and there are so many people who really are our unsung heroes with respects to the services that the city provides. We are fortunate to provide something for everybody, from small children's programs to senior programs. The second area that I would like to really emphasize is staff. We are very fortunate to have some incredibly qualified and professional staff who are out there every day on our behalf, whether it's the firefighters or the policemen, or just the everyday public works individual, or those folks who are giving us services at City Hall. When I was a city councilor, I never received complaints about how people were treated in the city with respects to the individual programs or requests that they had. The city is very responsive that way. The third thing that I like is the city's efforts to include the public with respects to having access. And the key program is the Fix It program. It's very easy. If you have a pothole or have something you want the city to address, you can go on and make that request, and it gets done. The other services I've seen of late are the updates on the city's website. Still quite complicated, I must say, but it's gotten better, and they keep revising it so that the public has more access to information. And I think that's vitally important to keeping people in touch and connected with the city.
Thank you. Our next question, I'll start with you, Cheryl, going back and forth. Tell us about your experience working on a challenging issue with a group of people with diverse perspectives.
I have many. Given the number of years that I served on the city council, there were always challenges. 2 come to mind very quickly. Number one, our curbside recycling program. It had failed twice before the city council because of the differences of opinion on the paper bag and how the program should be implemented. I put together a task force with the Public Works Department, bringing diverse, respective voices to the table. And we looked at all of the alternatives that were available, what was out in the marketplace, did the research, and came up with and implemented the program that you still see in place today, which is our curbside recycling program. It's hugely successful. We went from small double digits to up over 40% recycling. It cut our cost at EcoMaine, and it's just a good environmental thing to be doing. The second one, it was the rezoning of the eastern waterfront. Think about that one for a minute. If you want to talk about differing views, there were many. So I actually selected everybody I could think of that had an opinion and a different opinion to get around the table. And we ended up with a 23-member task force. But in the end, after 18 months, they came forth and coalesced as a group to come forth with recommendations with regards to the zoning down on the eastern waterfront.
Thank you. Marquette, the same question for you. Tell us about your experience working on a challenging issue with a group of people with diverse perspectives.
Yeah, thank you. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is sort of the work that I'm doing right now, working with Starting Strong here in Portland. As I said, I'm a parent organizer, and we advocate for increased access to childcare and early childhood programs. As you all probably know, childcare is a very complex and complicated system to navigate that a lot of parents and families have a hard time navigating. And so I have to find ways to work with parents, business owners, other stakeholders, elected officials, and really find ways to address this problem that is really becoming an increasingly growing problem here in Portland, and really bringing us together around our common goal, which is to make childcare more accessible for all families, regardless of social class, and also support our workforce during those times. Some people are well off and they can afford the childcare. Other people are working class, like my family that I grew up in, and sometimes people have to quit their jobs to take care of their child, and that puts them in jeopardy. So really finding ways to make sure that people are coming together around common goals and addressing the needs that are going on here in Portland as it pertains to childcare is something that I've done a lot in the past few months in that work.
Thank you. Our next question starts with you, Marquez. A lot of people who have been running for charter commission have been saying that they seek more transparency in city government. It's a phrase we hear a lot. Each of you has used it already tonight. What does transparency mean to you, and where could the city of Portland be more transparent? Marquez, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think the big thing as far as transparency goes, and I think that we're seeing this now, it's also an accessibility thing. And I mentioned this earlier. COVID has made it easier for us to attend school board and city council meetings. And so I think sort of making that more of a structural thing in city government would be a good thing, so that people are able to attend, know what's going on, instead of having to pick up the newspaper the next day, read about it in the newspaper. You can still read about it in the newspaper, but you'll have more context if you're able to be there in that meeting and hear what was said. And I think we'd like to see more of our city councilors having regular and school board members having regular town halls, just addressing what's going on, making sure that everything is easier for people, everyday Portlanders, to understand, because there are a lot of complex issues that are being discussed on a regular basis in City Hall, and everyday Portlanders might not necessarily understand how that is going to affect them. For instance, the development that's going up on Dalton Street, not every Portlander is going to know what that means for them. So just making sure that there are people there who are talking to everyday Portlanders, telling them what the effects are going to be, and just making it clear what is going on at all times in City Hall.
Thank you. Cheryl, the question for you, which is, what does transparency mean to you? Does the city of Portland need to be more transparent? And if so, where?
It's funny because I was thinking about that one today, and I actually did some Google searching to find the definition. And transparency has a lot of different interpretations depending on who you're talking
Cheryl,
to.
just so you know, your voice is, the audio is not high enough.
Oh, how's that?
Better. Thank you.
Better? Okay. Anyway, it means a lot of different things to different people, and it really comes down to a question of interpretation. With respects to the transparency for the city, I think they have made some great strides with respects to using social media. They actually have a Facebook page, and you can like them and then get all the notices. And then I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The program that they have where you can sign up to get notices from the different departments is a huge improvement over where we were before, because you'd have to go into City Hall, or you'd try to have to get information and find the right contact person. So that has been extremely helpful. The one area where I think the city could make some improvements, and actually the neighborhood associations is called PAN, the Portland Alliance of Neighborhoods, of which I am a member through the Eastern Neighborhood Association, has been talking about the process in which the city reviews projects throughout the city, but doesn't engage the neighborhoods and the neighborhood associations prior to decisions being made with respects to design, mass and scale, and does it meet the current development pattern within a neighborhood? And these are all very important. There's a role for neighborhood associations. And I take care of administering the East Erie Neighborhood Association, and actually rely on the city for information so that I can feed it out through my network.
Thank you. Our next question will start with you again, Cheryl. The most recent Charter Commission, the one that sat about a decade ago, committed internally to voting unanimously on each of its recommendations. That is, they weren't going to pass a recommendation unless they had a unanimous vote, which meant that not all recommendations made it. Only certain ones did. How do you feel about this decision and approach? Cheryl, I'll start with you.
Thought about that. I know there was a minority report written by a couple of individuals who did not agree with certain recommendations that came out of the Charter Commission. And that certainly is a vehicle for people who have another opinion. With respects to having it unanimous, I think that's going to really depend on how the meetings are facilitated by the chairman, and what the commission members decide they'd like to have as a process. And I think that probably is one of the questions that ought to be discussed fully by the commission members, so that they can decide if this is something they want to choose to do. It's an interesting idea, actually, and I didn't know that, John, that was your process, but I did know about the minority reports. And from my standpoint, what's really important here in process is that everybody has the opportunity to get their viewpoints out there. And then we will have to decide, depending on how those discussions take place, as to whether it's going to be a simple majority or a unanimous decision.
Thank you. Marcques, for you, what's your opinion about that decision and approach to only pass recommendations which are unanimous within the commission?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realize that was something that was decided internally by the last Charter Commission. I guess I didn't realize that you guys had passed only recommendations if it was unanimous. And I think Cheryl is right. I think it's going to depend on the makeup of the Charter Commission and how the Charter Commission decides to go about those things. I think that there are obviously a lot of us running. There's a lot of possibilities of diverse opinions. Going back to your last question and figuring out how we're going to work together. And if something that only bring forward something that's unanimous is the way that they decide to go, I think that we have to follow, and there would obviously have to be a vote on that as well. So we have to talk that through if we're elected to the Charter Commission and figure out what our approach is going to be to this and how we're going to move forward through that process. Obviously, my voice would just be one of the votes, but yeah, I think it's going to depend a lot on overall makeup of the Charter Commission and how we decide process is going to work.
Thank you. I'll start with you, Marcques, on this next question. The Charter Commission, the charter itself is as often called the Constitution of the city. It sets out a framework for operations and policy, but it's not something that actually directs operations or policy day by day. More generally, looking at the city of Portland, what do you think are the greatest challenges facing our city?
Great question. I'm first for this one, correct?
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of the greatest challenges that we're facing is, affordable housing is a big one that we struggle with, and we hear a lot about here in Portland. Is definitely gonna be a problem moving forward as Portland continues to grow in population. We've sort of been hovering around this 67, 68,000 population, and we're probably going to grow past that in a little bit. So we definitely need to make sure that we're ready for those growths there and address the affordable housing crisis. I also just think that the demographics of Portland are changing fast. New people are coming in. Whether that's immigrants or new families coming in, we need to make sure that we're able to address their needs and making sure that their needs are being met in everyday life. And then also, I think just infrastructure when it comes to like everyday things. I think like as far as like education goes, I think overall infrastructure there, making sure that equity is being displayed in our schools and so on. I think making sure that we're able to keep up with the changes that are coming in Portland. As we all know, it's a rapidly changing city that's constantly changing. So we need to make sure that we're staying up to date on those and addressing those changes. So just to clarify, I think affordable housing, racial equity, and overall infrastructure. Not saying that we're lacking infrastructure, but just making sure we're up to date on that.
Got it. Thank you very much. Cheryl, what do you think are the greatest challenges facing the city of Portland?
Based on the feedback that I'm getting from people in District 4, in my door-to-door, there is a high level of concern over the revaluation that's coming. People are nervous because there really hasn't been a lot of forthcoming information, except that we've been told that it's been delayed again and again and again, but there's no real data that's being presented to people to give us some indication of what the impact of that revaluation will be, especially on property taxes, because we are living in a time where the market is the craziest I've ever seen. It's terribly overinflated. The prices of houses are quite often going for anywhere from 60 to 100,000 over the asking price. And so that has people very nervous. The second issue, of course, that ties into that is rising property taxes. People want to stay here, but they don't know how long they can stay in their homes, especially those folks who have been here for a considerable length of time. It's also, I think, a deterrent to new people coming in because the property taxes that they pay in Portland, comparatively speaking to other communities, is higher. But there's a value to that. And then third, people want to continue to see maintenance of city services that are currently being provided. And number four, they want to be sure that the school renovations get finished. And they're very excited over here at Presumpscot School at the activity that is currently taking place with that school. And we have one more to go.
Thank you. I'll start with you, Cheryl, for the next question. Through the actions of the last Charter Commission, Portland went from a mayor who was essentially ceremonial to what is considered to be on the spectrum, relatively weak form of mayoral government. Some people advocate for a stronger role for the mayor. Do you agree or not, and why? What's your position on this?
My position has been pretty clear for a very long time. It's being touted by some of the organizations out there with respect to my having been opposed to the Charter Commission because of the original reason behind the Charter Commission the first time around that it was brought before the public was the whole elected mayor issue. So it's no secret that I have been opposed to that. I personally support a qualified professional city manager. The strongest argument for that is looking at the statistics, which we did when this issue was raised the first time, in that if you look at the data, more and more cities and towns are moving towards a city form of government because of the professional aspect that that individual brings to the job. A strong mayor has an awful lot of people, at least what I'm hearing out here in the district when I've been out there, has people very scared with regards to expanding the executive role for the individual, which would mean that they would have the power to hire our fire chief, our police chief, and our department heads. And there doesn't seem to be an appetite to quite go that far from what I'm hearing out here. And I'm not sure I would agree with that either. But that's not to say that, personally speaking, I'm not open-minded to seeking clarification if there is room for clarification in the charter with respects to the roles of those two individuals. The structural structure that was put in place is working. It isn't the structure that's been the problem, it's been the personalities. And that again begs the question, who do you want to be in that place? Someone qualified or someone that has a good personality or doesn't?
Okay, thank you. Marcus, it's for you now. The question is, we've gone from a relatively ceremonial mayor to a relatively weak mayor in terms of where you look on the spectrum, but has some powers. And there are people advocating for a stronger role for the mayor. Do you agree or not, and why?
Yeah, thank you. I do agree that I think that we need a stronger mayor. And when I talk to voters, some voters are really in favor of having a stronger mayor, but they don't want to lose necessarily the city manager. When I'm out here talking to voters in District 4, that's what I hear a lot. I think that people see that there's dysfunction between those two roles. We need to reevaluate that so that they are able to work better together for Portland. And I don't really think we can make progress if the positions of mayor and city manager are constantly at odds with one another. I think some of the powers that are currently held by the city manager could be held by the mayor in a more stronger role. I still believe that there's a role for a city manager helping with the day-to-day operations. Some people are talking about changing the title. I'm not really concerned with title. I think this is about making sure that Portland is working for everyone. So I do believe in redemocratizing City Hall and by giving the mayor more executive power and leaving the policy discussions up to the people who are elected to do those things, elected by the voters, and putting power back in the hands of the people. And right now, as I said earlier, the mayor is elected based on a vision that they have for the city, but right now has no, right in its current state, has no real ability to live out that vision for the city of Portland. So I think that having a stronger mayor will allow us to give the people a stronger voice in City Hall, and also put more power back in the hands of everyday Portlanders.
Thank you. I'm going to stay with you, Marcques, on this next question, and I'm going to dig a little at that. So if it's something like this now, and we give the mayor more, then how do you see the role of the city manager changing? What about that position? What should change specifically in the role of the city manager?
Yeah, I think that there should be someone in City Hall, the city manager, if you will, who is, in charge of, like contracts, paving roads, some of that sort of stuff, some of the like everyday like city sort of stuff that needs to be done, and more of the policy and budget decisions would be made by the mayor, who is elected by the people, who is held accountable by the people. So I think more of that role, those roles should be put more on the mayor's plate, and some of the more like administrative and paving roads and scheduling the plow trucks during the winter and the contractual stuff could be in the city manager's plate. I think it's just finding a way that the mayor can have more policy roles, and also so that the two can just work together. I think they've clashed in the past, and we need to find a way to make sure that they're working together for Portland, and making sure that our needs are being met that way.
Thank you. Cheryl, I'll ask you. We've talked about the mayor, but what about the city manager position? Does that need to change, and if so, how?
Does the city manager's position need to change? Is that the question, John?
Yeah, it's really, so we've talked about the mayor. Now let's talk about the city manager. What, if anything, needs to change there, or is that, where do you see that?
I have absolutely no problem with the current structure that we have in place. The city council hires based on a process of elimination after reviewing many, many candidates that come through to apply for the position. And they base that decision on the qualifications, professional qualifications of that individual to administer all of the city's services, not just contractual types of things or roads. I mean, the day-to-day operations are extensive with regards to what a city manager does. With respects to the mayor having more of a role in policy making, they do now. The mayor is a policy maker right along with the other members of the city council. That's not to say we haven't had situations in the past where the mayor has kind of gone rogue out on his own without working through some kind of a process with his colleagues in a collaborative way. That's what needs to happen. And again, it comes back to personalities. It's not the structure that's at issue. It's the personalities and what individual personalities bring into the mayor's position with regards to politics or how they see the position ought to be run. And we've had an experience twice now where two individuals didn't understand the role that was set out by the Charter Commission. I understood it, and a lot of other people understood it. So, and I think our current mayor understands it. So the flaw is in people having a higher expectation than what was set out with regards to that position.
Thank you. My next question, I'll start with you, Cheryl. Are elections in Portland clean enough? If they're not clean enough, what do we do to fix it, and why? I mean, what's at issue here?
In what respect, John?
Speak up.
In what respect?
Well, the clean elections have been a topic that actually brought this Charter Commission into existence. Do you think our elections in Portland not clean enough? What should we do to make them cleaner? What can the charter do to make an election cleaner?
I don't think we have a problem with clean elections per se. The issue and the impetus for fair elections was about the amount of money that's being generated by some of the candidates, especially the last mayoral election, where there was an excessive amount of money that was raised, and it brought into question, does that allow people who can't raise that kind of money to actually run for that position? I think there's a lot of other issues, and I've given this one a great deal of thought too. I think that, first of all, the fair elections folks were absolutely right to express concern about the amount of money being spent. But at the same time, I think it begs the question of maybe the possibility of a cap on campaign spending. I also think, and I'm pretty adamant about this one, especially seeing what has happened with this particular race for charter commission, there needs to be a requirement for financial reporting of political influences by nonprofit entities that are interjecting themselves into Portland politics, and yet they have absolutely no responsibility or regulation that says, hey, tell us who your donors are. Who are you? Tell us who you are. Give us a face and be transparent. Now, there's a good use of transparency. I also think that there's a lot of details that need to be discussed about how that system would be put in place. Would it be structured in the same way that the state legislature does it, where you collect $5? Those are kind of the doubles in the details kind of an issue. I also think, based on the current financial reports that I reviewed from various charter commission members, that we have some interesting.
All right.
I can finish in 2 seconds.
Go ahead.
There's a category, cash contributions of under $50 or under, where you put it in the aggregate. One of the individuals had like 60 individual under $50, which is highly unlikely. And I think there needs to be a better accounting, and that amount of money for reporting needs to be reduced so we can see and it's transparent as to who's actually giving the money.
That's a long 2 seconds. Marcus, I'll give you the question now, which is, are elections in Portland clean enough? And if not, how do we fix it through the charter?
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that the topic at hand is obviously municipal clean elections. I'm in full support of a municipal clean elections program. That's sort of what got us to this point. And now we need to honor what the people wanted, which is municipal clean elections program. As Cheryl mentioned, you don't have to look any further than the 2019 mayoral race, where candidates combined spent over $300,000. Lots of that coming from big donors, donating a lot of money, maxing out, that sort of thing. And I don't think that that's sort of what Portland needs necessarily. I think that municipal clean elections program is good because it allows, instead of a candidate talking to only a few big donors and getting money from them, they are forced to talk to more individuals who are giving small dollar contributions, and they are accountable to more people through that process and are forced to talk to more people in that fundraising process. And it's there's obviously like a lot of figuring out on how we're going to model that program and what it's going to look like, how many contributions equal how much money, and so on. And I think that a cap on something would be great as well. And something else I would like to see as well is lobbyist disclosures in these sort of races, seeing who is getting involved, sort of more details on PACs and lobbyists that are getting involved in our local elections. Last year, we saw a lot of money being spent by groups. And I think that we should take a look at that as well.
Thank you, Marcus. You get the first go round at this next question. Tell us about a situation where someone who is very unlike you, with different opinions and different perspectives, managed to persuade you to adopt their position?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think that given my background and where I'm from, I grew up in rural central Maine. I grew up around a lot of people who are ideologically different from me. And I think that I was able to learn a lot through those processes, hearing people talk about why it is that they believe what they believe. And I think that I've been persuaded a lot, and on some issues, I'm very middle because of that. And I think that one case in particular, I'm trying to think of. I'm trying to think of one specific one, but I think just like overall, like in my background, I've learned to really work well with people and hear people out and collaborate with them. And I think a lot of that goes back to my background in education, just sort of learning how to listen intently, really collaborate with folks, and really hearing them out. I think has really helped me to gain other people's perspectives, and has really like helped me in this process, working with people, talking to people in District 4 who are of diverse backgrounds and diverse ideologies when it comes to politics and other issues.
Thank you. Cheryl, the same question for you. Tell us about a situation where someone very unlike you, with different opinions and different perspectives, persuaded you to adopt their position.
Actually, there's been many occasions. I worked for Senator Olympia Snowe, and I ran her Portland office for many years. And I can tell you, she was an incredible mentor with regards to listening to opposing viewpoints, understanding that your opponents should be treated with humanity, even though they may have a different opinion than you do. And she also, and in my own experience as a city councilor, some of the best ideas I got were by listening to different opinions. I don't know everything, and I don't know everything about an issue. So when you listen to differing viewpoints, quite often it brings you to a middle place, and people can come to an agreement and a consensus. And that's a very powerful thing in any process, when you can take differing viewpoints and bring people together to agree, even though you may not totally agree on the final outcome, but to at least have a discussion about it. All of my friends are Democrats. I've been criticized for being a Republican, but I got to tell you, all of my friends are Democrats. And so it's always an interesting discussion over lunch about the various topics, because I have friends who are in the legislature. I have friends who are involved in other different community things. And to be honest with you, it makes the conversation much more enjoyable when you can be respectful. And that's not a hard thing to do. Just be civil and respectful of one another's opinion, and finish your lunch and then go home.
Okay. We're going to ask you now to give closing statements. It'll be 2 minutes for each of you. You can say anything you'd like, really. And Cheryl, we'll start with you. 2 minutes, please.
Just a second. Whoops. I'm sorry. I'm having a logistical problem here. I put together some closing thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you again for hosting the forum. It's always fun to get together with friends and neighbors. I have to say, when I retired, I threw my hands up, said, thank goodness I'm done with this. But here I am again, and I feel extremely fortunate to have reconnected with an awful lot of friends and relationships that I missed over the years through my city council work. But anyway, if elected, it really will be my privilege to represent District 4 again. I earned a reputation while I was a city councilor as one who listens. I look at all sides of an issue before I come to a conclusion, and I'm very passionate and principled about doing the right thing. I am committed to the integrity of the process, and I can't emphasize this enough, because there has to be an effort where people are going in with no preconceived notions as to outcomes. A process where commission members will coalesce as a group. That's going to be very important. We have to listen to each other, because at the end of the process, we're responsible for what comes out of the Charter Commission that will then go to the people. And there has to be a public trust in what we've done and the decisions that we make and the process that we use to come to conclusions that will ultimately go out. I encourage people to educate themselves on the tangible accomplishments and qualifications of the candidates. I believe you need to know where you've been in order to know where you want to go. I bring that experience, knowledge, and perspective to the Charter Commission. And then one final thing I would like to say, especially based on the conversation that's taking place here today about PAC funding, et cetera, this came in the mail today. And I want to make it abundantly clear, perfectly clear, and I can't emphasize this enough. I do not want to disband the commission as stated in this piece of flyer that came in the mail today. I do not appreciate the untruths that have been put in this flyer about where I stand or votes I took on issues. And Marcques, I couldn't be more disappointed. I thought you were a better person. I am, shame on you. Such tactics and nastiness do not belong in this election. Okay, everybody, thank you. Get out there and vote on Tuesday, June 8th.
Thank you. Marcus, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, John. And I just would like to say, to clarify, I don't have anything to do with that mailer. If I did, that would be highly illegal and a campaign finance violation. I'm not involved with that in any capacity, and I don't condone what was said there. I approached you, Cheryl, right after you took out papers. I showed up at your door, and I just wanted to talk with you about the issues, about who you are. And I tried to make this as peaceful. And I told you I wasn't going to go negative, and I haven't gone negative to this point. I have kept my word to you all the way through this, and I have nothing to do with this. I can't control what independent groups do, but I have kept my word to you, Cheryl, this entire time. And I am a man of my word, and I will continue to do that. I told you this was going to be kosher and peaceful, and I'm going to continue to do that. I'm sorry that there are people out there saying those things about you, but they're not coming from me. This race to me is about making sure that people have a voice. And I love this city so much, and we all love this city. And I really want to start my family here, but sometimes I feel like I'm squeezed out of local government. And I know what it's like to feel like I don't have a voice in local government. And I just want to make sure that there are structures in place to make sure that the future generation here in Portland, their needs are being met. People who want to grow old in their homes, they can do that without fearing the inflating property taxes. I want to make sure that our kids can grow up and stay here and participate in our workforce. And to do all of that, I don't know everything. I've said this before. That's why I'm leaning on my neighbors to gain perspective and understand what they're going through, and really hear them out, and just being there for them. With that being said, I'm call me, email me anytime if you ever need anything. I am here for you, the people of District 4. Thank you so much for your time tonight, John and David, for timing. Thank you so much to all of the neighborhood associations. This was a great event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to both of our candidates for being here tonight and giving such serious thought to the questions. This forum has been sponsored by Deering Center Neighborhood Association, Back Cove Neighborhood Association, and Friends of Woodford's Corner. And again, it was broadcast live on Facebook and also recorded. So if you want to watch the recording, you can go to Friends of Woodford's Corner's YouTube channel, and there you'll be able to watch the four of us who are most on the screen here. Thank you all very much again. And as Cheryl said, and I'm sure Marcus agrees, make sure to go out and vote. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you.